I just spent 3 months living in Peru as a digital nomad. In today's video, I'm going to go over the pros, the cons, and everything you need to know about living in Lima, Peru. Stick around to the end where I'll reveal whether or not you should live in Peru. For starters, let's go over the cons. As with most Latin American cities, safety is a bit of a concern. Major crime in Peru isn't a huge issue. Most of the crime here is petty theft. The major thing you need to be aware of is your phone. A lot of people will be on their phone like this and a motorcycle will come up and grab it from them. There's a major black market for cell phones down here, so just something to be aware of. Always keep it in your pocket or text next to a building so it's harder for someone to come up and nab. That being said, if you stay in Miraflores or the nice areas of Barranco or other nice districts, you should be pretty good. However, it's just something to be aware of. There also wasn't a moment where I felt too unsafe in Peru. Obviously, you have to be smart. I didn't go out late at night as it was a little bit sketchy in some areas, but overall, it wasn't too bad, and honestly, I wasn't that concerned. I live near Toronto, and I can honestly say some areas of Toronto are scarier than nice areas of Peru. So there's a comparison just so you can get a grasp of things. The biggest thing I noticed was there wasn't a whole lot of drugs in Peru. I might have seen one crackhead in the whole 3 months I was there. Where the last weekend I was in Toronto, I probably seen about 10 in a 20-minute walk. So that's just something to keep in mind. There's less drug addicts down there, at least in the nicer areas. So you're a little more safe that way. There's not a bunch of crazy people going to come up to you and fucking try and kill you or something like that, which is nice. Where if you're in Toronto, you'll be walking around and a little sketched out when you're walking by someone because they're tweaking on something. So that's one pro of Peru. Another con is there's lots of pollution in Peru. Most of the cars there are a lot older and less fuel efficient, stuff like that. So there is a bit of smog on the hotter days. It's not all the time, but there is a bit, especially in downtown Lima. So that's another thing to be aware of. It never bothered me, but if you're have trouble breathing, maybe it might bother you. I don't know. Honestly, it wasn't that bad, but it's just something to be aware of. While we're on the topic of cars, I try and get an Airbnb off the beaten path. I was on a main road, so there's constant honking. Peruvians really like to use that horn, so it's just something to keep in mind. If you're on a main highway or main road, there's always going to be honking. And a lot of Airbnbs don't have AC down there. So since it's hot, you got to sleep with the window open, which is completely doable because it does cool off at night, but you do hear the horns. So just something to keep in mind there. Another big con with Lima, Peru is this cloudy 6 months of the year. They're winter months, you don't see much of the sun. I went from March 10th to like June 8th. So the first month and a half to 2 months were great weather, sun every day. But the last month, it was completely cloudy. There might have been like 2 or 3 days where I seen the sun. And when I say cloudy, it's like a thick layer of cloud. Like I was on the 15th floor of my building and I couldn't see outside the window at all some days because it's just so cloudy. So that's another thing to keep in mind. You can avoid this by going at the right time of year, but the cloud does bring nice temperature and you can always escape the city. Like I went down to Ica for a week and the weather there was beautiful. It is a desert, so you can expect the sun. But yeah, if you're staying in Lima, Peru, it does get cloudy for 6 months of the year. So that's something just to keep in mind. And if you like the sun, planning a trip around it, it does get a little depressing. It's not nearly as bad as the winters here in Canada, but you got to be aware of it. On the plus side though, in the summer months, there's no rain. It's sunny every day and it's hot. So if you go at the right time of year, it's perfect weather. So you just got to plan your trip accordingly. Those are really the 3 big cons. There are 2 more that I'd like to talk about. The first being the water. You can drink the water down there. I talked to a few locals who do and risk it, but I wouldn't, especially if you're traveling. Even if you like boil it, there's still like heavy metals in it apparently. So I always got the water bottles from a store. You can get big jugs. I didn't even brush my teeth with it. Some people do, some people don't. I didn't want to risk it. I wouldn't risk it if I were you, but you just got to be careful about the water. After about 2 weeks, you don't really notice it, but there is a bit of a change from North America where you can drink the water pretty much anywhere. So it's just something to keep in mind. Along with that, they say don't drink water at restaurants or ice from restaurants. In the higher end restaurants, I was drinking drinks with ice. I did take Dukerol before I went down, which helped with stomach issues. So I never had any issues, but use at your own risk, I guess. Like if you're going in a sketchy place, obviously I wouldn't drink the water or the ice. But if I was in a nice, fancy, high-end restaurant, I kind of risked it and I was okay. But yeah, use at your own risk. And for the last con, with the financial situation of some of the locals, there's a lot of like harassment culture almost. Like you go down a busy street for nightlife and you're constantly getting bombarded with people telling you, hey, come use this restaurant, free drinks, beautiful women, stuff like that. It might be all over Latin America. Peru was my first destination, honestly. One trick I found is you say you already got a reservation at a different restaurant, or you just ate. Tell them that, they'll stop bugging you, and if they see you again, they know that this guy's not going to go. There's also a lot of people trying to sell you like necklaces and stuff like that. Honestly, if you just ignore them, it seems kind of rude, but they don't leave you alone if you give them your attention, so you just got to ignore them, walk by them, and go on with your day. They usually respect you if you ignore them. It's just you feel kind of rude because you don't like ignoring people. Okay, now for the pros. If you stay in a nice area of Lima, the infrastructure is really good. Like I was in a condo that was just as nice as any in North America. Aside from the fact that you can't drink the water, it was pretty much like being back at home. A lot of the areas aren't good infrastructure, so make sure you stay in like the Miraflores or Barranco area that's close to Miraflores. There are some other districts, but I can't speak on them as I was never there, but just make sure you do your research. Make sure you're staying in a nice area. Miraflores, you're safe. Barranco, you're good. Just make sure you're staying on the side near Miraflores or the water, as that's where the buildings are the nicest. But if you're in a nice area, there's very nice infrastructure similar to back home. Another pro is the view. If you're anywhere near the coastline, it's just beautiful all the way around. Sunsets every night in the summer. Just amazing sunsets. There's surfing. You're on a cliff in most of Lima, so there's just a wonderful view. If you stay in Miraflores or Barranco, there's a beautiful bike lane that covers pretty much the entire top of the cliff, and it has a beautiful view all the way along it, which was just a pleasant experience to go walking or biking down pretty much every day. The gardens are well maintained, and it's just a pleasant experience. Now this pro, I'm sure you've already heard it. If you haven't, you're going to be hearing lots about it, but the food in Peru is just on another level. Like where I was in Lima, they had like 2 of the top best restaurants and like the top 50th bar. It's just incredible, the food there. I can honestly say I never had a bad meal. No matter where I went, there's just delicious food, amazing presentation. There's some cool bars you can go to with some cool drinks that are really sweet. So just be ready to eat a lot, enjoy yourself. It's incredible, the food. Aside from food, which is still cheap, but they know they're known for it, so it's a little more expensive, I guess, than other Latin American cities. Everything else is pretty cheap. Like rent was probably 30 to 50% cheaper than it would have been here in North America. Ubers were ridiculous. I don't know how they make a living, honestly. Like I could get a ride pretty much anywhere for less than $15. Most of the time I was spending like $5 to go somewhere. Delivery is even cheaper, like $2, $3, you can get something delivered to your place. I don't know how they do it either. Like the gym I went to was super nice, cheap as hell. Food, as I said earlier, it's a little more expensive, but it's still pretty cheap. Like a lot cheaper than here in North America. Anything Peruvian is a lot cheaper, but if it's imported from North America, like a Red Bull or an American steak, it's going to be comparable to back home. But yeah, anything locally made is pretty cheap. The next pro is that the locals are very friendly. I never had any issues with any of them. They were always willing to help, willing to work through my shitty Spanish. They were very good that way. Aside from that, they're good to show you around. Obviously, keep your wits about you. Some people may be there to rip you off, but I never really had too many issues. So yeah, locals are very nice. Another great pro of Peru is it has everything from coastline to desert to rainforest to mountains. It pretty much has anything geographically. It also has all the activities that come along with that. For instance, there's always paragliders out, surfers out, anything you can imagine. They were there. It was awesome for that. If you want to experience life, that's the place to go. You can pretty much do anything that you want to do. Another thing that's kind of nice is here in North America, you're kind of like restricted on what you can do based on safety regulations. In Peru, it's more you can do whatever, just use your common sense. Like I remember me and my mom went for a hiking trail that would definitely not be a thing here. But in Peru, it's kind of like a use at your own risk. So it's kind of nice that way. You're not restricted as much with safety. Obviously, there's more risk there, but just use common sense and you're good to go. Another great thing about Lima, and I hear it's with all Latin American cities really, is the city is extremely walkable. Aside from taking Ubers at night, because I didn't want to risk it, I could pretty much walk anywhere within half an hour. Whether it was a grocery store, gym, bar, or restaurant, they had everything within a good walking distance. You get a lot of steps in per day, but it is very walkable, which is great for travelers is you don't really want to drive down there. The traffic's pretty wild, let's put it that way. And lastly, as mentioned earlier in the video, the weather is perfect 6 months of the year. So make sure to plan your trip accordingly and enjoy the perfect weather. Now, here's a few other things you need to know about Peru. For starters, at the time of recording this video, you can only stay in Peru for 3 months as a Canadian or US citizen without getting a visa or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. There are people that go for longer. It's usually just a fine. However, it's at the border guard's discretion. So you could get barred from the country, I hear. Obviously, I haven't seen that in my experience. A lot of people risk it and just pay the fine. It's like $2 a day, apparently. However, that is something to keep in mind. I didn't want to risk it. I want to play it safe, so I came home after 3 months. Also, when you first land in Lima, it looks a bit run down. However, when you get to Miraflores or Barranco, it really starts to look nice. Around the airport, there's just a lot of houses without roofs or windows or stuff like that. So if it's your first time in Latin America, it is a little bit shocking. So just giving you a heads up, it is like that, but it does get better as soon as you get like 15 minutes away from the airport. Now, do I recommend Peru? 100%. An amazing country to go to. You can easily spend a week there. You can easily spend 3 months there. Whatever time frame you want to go for, it's perfect for that. It is a lot cheaper than North America, so you can sustain yourself longer. And in my opinion, the positives far outweigh the negatives. It was my first Latin American experience and my first solo experience, and I would definitely recommend it to any other beginners. It's relatively safe for Latin America, cheap, and there isn't a whole lot of culture shock. If you're in Miraflores or the side of Barranco that's bordering with Miraflores, it's a lot like what I imagine California to be like. It's a very nice city, and I definitely recommend it for any beginners who are wanting to dip their toes in the water at Latin America. It's definitely a great place to start. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe for more content on travel and self-improvement, and I hope to see you at the next one.